Sakti, that is love for the glories, singing the glories and qualities of God. Singing or just being attracted towards the qualities of God, and that's how most of us come, or many devotees come to God. They hear about God, they like what is being said of God, they like the spiritual qualities of the saints. It need not necessarily be God, because qualities of the saints are nothing but qualities of God. So they like these, they hear about, they get information, and that attracts us. So that's sort of the starting point. Then God has many forms, you can say, or there are many conceptions of God. One is nirguna, there is no guna at all. Then there is saguna but nirakara. Saguna nirakara is the Ishvara, who is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of this universe, but no specific akara. Then there is saguna sakara, particular rupa. So a devotee of all these chooses a rupa, a form of his or her choice, because that love which he or she has been thinking, and which the love of the qualities which he or she has been hearing and liked should collage into some form. It has to find a receptacle. So a particular rupa is selected by devotee, which we call Ishta Devata. So that becomes Rupa Sakti. Then our love finds a definite target, so to say. Earlier it was just the qualities. Then it finds a target. It finds a concrete form. That becomes our Ishta Devata, and that's what Narada calls Rupa Sakti. There is love, attachment to a particular form of God. Then this love, when it becomes proactive, dynamic, it has to manifest itself in seva. So that becomes puja sakti. The devotee feels that it is not enough to love, that love has to manifest itself in some action, in some service of God. So the devotee undertakes various forms of physical activities. All of these will be clubbed as, will be called as puja. It could be actually physically worshipping the statue or idol of God, or it could be performing all actions in a spirit of dedication unto God, visiting places of pilgrimage, pradakshina, serving the society. Many forms this puja can take. It involves some kind of some sacrifice, some effort on the part of the devotee, and a lot of psychological effort, psychological giving up, so to say. Puja, when we perform all our actions in a spirit of dedication unto God, we are giving up our petty interests in that action, in the results of that action. We are giving up and saying this is being done for God. So there is this sacrifice in puja, and that is the third form, so to say. But one thing we have to understand, this is not like going from one class to another and we never again think of the earlier class. This is not like that. It's just that one after another doors open. But the first where we started, we are still holding on to it. Like we start with liking the qualities and Mahatmya, glory of God. Then we fall in love, so to say, of a particular rupa. There we don't stop liking the Guna Mahatmya of God. It continues. We don't stop singing it, we don't stop liking it, we don't stop relishing it. So also when we start doing puja, we do not stop loving a particular form of God. It's inclusive, it becomes inclusive. That we have to understand. Narada Maharshi himself is a great example. He has realized God, but still he keeps on singing the names and glories of the Lord. So Guna Mahatmya Sakti is there even in Narada Maharshi, who is a God realized person. So we have to keep that in mind. It's not that we go from one to another and give up the farmer. It's not that. We retain the farmer. Just that newer and newer vistas open, so to say. So these three, I think we had seen in our last class. Now, the next one is about Smarana Sakti, the love or attachment for remembering God. Now that's very composite. Composite in the sense it is there in all the three. When we sing the name and glories of God, when we think of His Rupa, when we perform work, puja, all these three, the Smarana is there. So that Smarana, so to say, catches our love. We feel joy in remembering God, irrespective of whatever we are doing, whatever is the means. What is more important is that we remember God, and our joy is in remembering God. That is Smarana Sakti. We get attached, so to say, to remembrance of God. This is a fairly advanced stage. See, Sri Ramakrishna says when you shed tears hearing the name of God, then you have progressed. So that is what we have to remember. They give one or two examples, persons who love food. Even the slightest suggestion will bring to them their mind the thought of food, or sometimes even without any suggestion, they will remember food. So, like that, when we start remembering God with slightest of suggestion, or even without suggestion, and relishing that thought of God, that remembrance of God, then we have progressed in spiritual life. We are on the right path, so to say. It is not the end of the journey, but we are on the right path. The other example they give is it applies to all these four. The children, they have great love for playing, great attachment to play. So even 5 minutes they get spare time, they will start playing. That should happen to us. Our love for spiritual life, our love for religious life should be such. Even a little free time we get, the mind should go, move, take us towards some spiritual endeavor. It could be anything. It could be just chanting name of God, or reading some scripture, religious book, or looking at just sit and look at the picture of Ishtadevata, whatever it is, what is called resting pulse, so to say. So, whenever there is free time, even however a short span of time it could be, the mind moves, goes toward God and spiritual life, then say that's an indication that we are progressing on the right path. So these are the four types of asaktis, four types of love, so to say, four ways in which bhakti manifests itself, or bhakti takes us higher and higher. These four have been told by Narada. Then next four are in terms of bhava. So all these four disciplines which we have discussed till now, this can be practiced with one bhava or the other. When it's a bhava, it means this dasya bhava. So Narada calls it dasya sakti, sakhya sakti, kanta sakti. Like that, 3, 4 vatsalya sakti. 4 attitudes with which we can practice devotion. Dasya sakti is loving God, or serving God, or remembering God in a spirit as a servant remembers the master, as a servant loves the master. That is the devotee's attitude towards God, the attitude of a servant. Then there is Sakhya Sakti, they are to be a friend. The devotee thinks himself or herself to be a friend of God. There is Kanta Sakti, Madhura Bhava. God is thought of as a spouse, as one's spouse. And then there is Vatsalya Sakti, or Vatsalya Bhava, where God is treated as one's own child. So either of these one can practice, but it is advised that we take help of either of these, and of all these. For Dasya Bhava is best. Sri Ramakrishna has added one more, thinking oneself to be a child of God, and he says this is the most suited and safest of all, thinking oneself to be child of God. Sri Ramakrishna himself practiced that. He thought himself to be a child of God. So that is another bhava. So, but we should take recourse to either of these. These two are safest. One is taking oneself to be a child of God, or taking oneself to be a servant of God. Dasya bhava, which Hanumana is the ideal, so to say. So these two are safest. Bhakti teachers advocate that we should nurture, practice one of these bhavas that helps strengthen our devotion. That helps, so to say, define our devotion, gives more strength to it. So either of these can be practiced, and all these four Narada has listed as various when he's listing the various expressions of bhakti. So the last three are of a higher realm. The first of the last three is Atma Nivedana Sakti, the love of surrendering oneself to God. The love of Atma Nivedana, surrendering oneself to God. This is as I said, this comes at a higher stage. And this, what is this surrender, that we should try to actually figure out what do you mean by surrendering ourselves to God. There are various, couple of explanations can be given, Atma Nivedana. So when we start puja or doing work in a spirit of worship, we are giving up our attachment for the results of those actions. Generally, people take up actions for a definite result, but devotee, a spiritual person, he gives up those results of actions, undertake actions because they come to him or her as his or her duty, in a spirit of dedication unto God. When we perform actions also, temptations will come, or there will be some effect on our mind as to what will be the result of the action. So results of the action do influence our mind as we undertake the action. But by praying and by practice, devotee overcomes this effect, this thought about what will be the effect of action on our mind. He or she is able to overcome to a great extent. That is one stage, so to say. But still, the sense of agency remains. That I am the doer, that sense remains. But through practice of this giving up the results of action and attachment to action, devotee does reach a stage where he or she feels or experiences that he or she is just an instrument in the hand of God, and God alone is the doer. And that is, so to say, complete surrender to God. That is Atma Nivedanam. That God alone is doing everything. That's something which has to be reached, not practiced. We cannot practice this non-doership, akartritva, that I am not the doer. This is not to be practiced. It is to be experienced. So this Atma Nivedana, it comes as a result of practicing the earlier ones. This Guna Mahatmya Sakti, Rupa Sakti, and all that we practice these, and then comes this Atma Nivedana, where the devotee finds, experiences, feels that he or she is just an instrument. God alone is doing things. That is Atma Nivedana, surrendering oneself to God. That is one explanation. The other explanation is we turn away from the world for all happiness and security. Presently, this world is where we depend for our happiness and security, but the devotee turns away from it and says that God alone is the source of my happiness and security, both. And God, all work is worship of God, and all happenings are blessings of God. That is another way of putting this Atma Nivedana. This is another way of Sharanagati, where we turn away from the world towards God for all our happiness and security. We say all our work is worship of God, and we are able to really experience that everything is happening by the will of God. All happenings are by will of God. That is also Sharanagati. So there is joy in this Sharanagati. That is Bhakti. So this Atma Nivedana Sakti is this. The next is Tanmaya Sakti, which it's kind of gradually this Atmanivedana will lead to Tanmayata. Tanmayata means being filled with God. The devotee has no awareness, so to say, of the world within and without. It's all God and God alone. That is Tanmaya Sakti. We live, move, and have our being in God, one of the Christian saints says. So that happens to the devotee. There is no, the whole world, even if it is felt as if filled with God. So within and without, there is nothing but God. That is Tanmaya Sakti. And the last one Narada lists is Parama Viraha Sakti. Parama Viraha Sakti. See, when Swamiji points out the difference between Vyakulata and Viraha. There is a difference between Vyakulata and Viraha. Vyakulata is when we have not achieved something. That is Vyakulata. So, the devotee wants to realize God, then he or she is yearning for God. That is Vyakulata. So, Vyakulata is one, but Viraha is different. Viraha is when the devotee has had a glimpse of God and then for some reason or the other is not able to continue in that experience of God. That is Viraha. That's what happened to the gopis. That's what happened to Sri Ramakrishna. He had the vision of God, but then he wanted continuous vision. And that is where the Viraha came. So this is a highest, so to say, stage of Bhakti, Parama Viraha Sakti, which is after an experience of God. So these are the various 11 forms of the devotion that Narada Maharshi has listed. They are the first four we can practice. They are not like exclusive of each other. We keep all of them, we practice all of them. But we should finally lead to this Tanmayata, which is being filled with God, so to say. Anyway, this is another a couple of sutras remain. Mostly next class we will conclude this our study of Narada Bhakti Sutras. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.